been a messin' where you shouldn't have been a messin'. And now someone else is getting all your best. These boots are made for walking, and that's just what they'll do. One of these days these boots are gonna walk all over you.
Am I dedicating that song this morning to voters in Kitchener-Conestoga and Waterloo? Voters who thought they were voting Green and then ended up with the Green DP? No, it's just a coincidence that we're getting walked all over by Nancy Sinatra to start the show today. Because it was on this day in 1966 that Nancy took that song to number one on the U.S. singles chart. The song was originally written by Lee Hazelwood, inspired by a line spoken by Frank Sinatra in the movie Four for Texas. They tell me them boots ain't built for walking, was the line in the movie, leading to the 1966 hit for Nancy Sinatra. On this day in 1966, this day is the 26th of February. Welcome to the program. Thank you very much for stopping by. It is always appreciated for our friends in Guelph who I know enjoy listening to the show, and we enjoy having you here with us. We're sorry in the most Canadian way we possibly can be. We're sorry for laying a little bit of a whooping on your hockey team last night, but only a little bit sorry. Only as sorry as we can be when results are measured in wins and losses, and you want your team to win. And ours here in Kitchener did last night as the Rangers walloped the Guelph Storm by a score of 6-1. I received a message from Clive this morning, and I'm happy to hear more from you about this because, you see, I had to serve my other master yesterday, leaving this show, and I guess, I don't know, what do I do for a couple of hours before getting ready for the next thing that I do? Anyway, try to turn off my brain from politics and get ready for some hockey, and went to the rink last night. So I, of course, missed the English language federal Liberal leadership debate. And Clive's email to Mike at 570news.com says, how have the Liberals been hiding Karina Gould? She crushed the debate and the post-debate interview. Are you saying there's a chance? Clive, I'm not so sure I can go that far.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
I do not think there is a chance for Karina Gould to win this thing, but I guess one never knows. The debate performance can certainly help, but it seems as though Mark Carney is still the front runner. But because I was serving that other master last evening, if you were able to watch the debate, depending on what you thought of the debate, and you want to provide some perspective on it, you know, as soon as we begin the show each and every day, phone lines open up so that you can share your thoughts at 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. Another perspective from Ernie, who emailed me late last night, says, I know you're busy from the Rangers game. You know my schedule really well. Good for you. Apparently, Ernie's email goes on. Sorry, it was under the subject line, just watched the debate. Apparently, Trump is in the running for the Liberal Party and Pierre Poilievre because they mentioned him many times. They didn't discuss the economy, the crime, the deficit. Well, maybe it was brought up for the 30 seconds or so they spent on it. Also, this is a Liberal Party message for Canadians. All the candidates agree with each other. Orange man bad, Pierre bad. They didn't disclose why him or she would be the best leader. Is it just a Liberal rally party for the coronation of our next PM? And again, Trump bad, Pierre bad, but let's forget about the past 10 years. Well, that's what Liberal or any leadership convention or race is all about, right? It is to celebrate the party, find the best leader with the best ideas. And yeah, it is interesting how much all of this has been about Donald Trump. I mean, we are, after all, at least for the time being, still a sovereign nation, but nonetheless, it still seems as though Mark Carney is the front runner in that Liberal leadership race.
One is the loneliest number that you'll ever do.
All right, let's get to your Farwell Show 5 for this Wednesday morning. Number one, today's Waterloo Region Record reporting that the Wilmot lands are being assembled for a future Toyota plant. Now, only confidential sources are quoted in the article, but that story does reinforce what many have believed since the land in Wilmot is about equidistant between existing Toyota plants in Cambridge and Woodstock. Those two plants have produced more vehicles than any other part of Ontario's auto sector for the past 5 years. Number two, Ontario Green Party leader Mike Schreiner will be in Kitchener today. Now, so far, he's been silent on a couple of his candidates endorsing NDP opponents. One of those candidates, who received an endorsement, will join our show this morning at 10:15. Elsewhere on the campaign trail today, Progressive Conservative leader Doug Ford starts the day with an announcement just outside of Windsor, and then he ends his day in Mississauga, East Cooksville, the riding that Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie is hoping to win to secure her seat in the legislature. Crombie's itinerary says she'll spend the bulk of her day in Mississauga, while NDP leader Marit Stiles has campaign events scheduled from Toronto to Niagara today. Number three, on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, Liberal Party members can begin casting advance ballots today to choose their next leader less than 2 weeks from now. Mark Carney, Chrystia Freeland, Karina Gould, and Frank Bayliss made their pitches to Liberal voters in 2 debates this week. They debated the carbon tax as well as U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff threats on Canadian goods. Carney is widely seen as the frontrunner in this race. A new Liberal Party leader will be elected on March the 9th. Number four, believe it or not, on-street parking bans remain in effect as snow events are still in place in Kitchener, Cambridge, and Waterloo. The cities are still trying to dig out from under that massive snowfall 2 weeks ago. Meantime, this week's mild temperatures have started a melt, raising concerns over flooding. We'll talk about that on the show this morning at 10. And number five on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, you may notice a lot of pink around the office and at your kids' school today. Today's Pink Shirt Day, a day that raises awareness around bullying. Both the local public and Catholic school boards have asked staff and students to wear pink if they can. The annual Anti-Bullying Day is recognized across Canada and New Zealand. It started back in 2007 when 2 teens in Nova Scotia handed out pink shirts to protest the bullying of a new student who was wearing a pink shirt. You can find more information and resources at pinkshirtdaycanada.ca. And that is your Farwell Show 5 for this Wednesday morning. A quick break. When we come back, I haven't changed my mind, but I wish that maybe I had been less passionate yesterday in talking about the Green DP candidates in Kitchener-Conestoga and Waterloo. We'll talk about it and take your calls on the morning wake up coming up on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. If you listened to the show yesterday, you probably heard me express my frustration with the goings-on in both Kitchener-Conestoga and Waterloo, 2 of our 5 provincial ridings as we head towards a vote. Voting day is tomorrow, don't you know? That is our provincial election. But what frustrated me was how at seemingly the 11th hour, a couple of Green candidates essentially removed themselves from the race and endorsed their NDP opponent. I am on record as saying that I think the political left in this country, I think it should happen federally as well, should really get itself together under one banner, because they continue to argue with one another about who should get top billing in a riding or who should be there and not be there, because they recognize that they're eating one another's lunches in every election. Even if you look at the most recent polling heading into tomorrow's vote, it shows that the progressive Conservatives are likely to win another strong majority, but get less than 50% of the overall vote, which means more than 50% is being left available to the other side, if you will, of the center of the political spectrum. And instead of dividing that between 3 parties, those 3 parties, I think, could come together and unite under one banner, and then we have a choice, a more distinct choice. And the left-leaning progressive parties don't have to eat one another's lunch. But what frustrates me, and I got pretty passionate yesterday, and listen, I make no apologies for that. I'm a passionate person. I care deeply about what happens around here, about the things that are going on. And where I get stuck is in a situation that I could never possibly find myself. And that is really turning my back on a commitment that I made. And that's the lens through which I view things. And in this particular case, it's, I think, extremely relevant. I've never left a job without 2 weeks' notice. Even when I had another job lined up, if I didn't like where I was, I still put in that 2 weeks' notice because that's the commitment I make to you when you hire me. Not only will I give you my very best effort every day, but I'll give you 2 weeks' notice before I leave so you can find a replacement for me. That kind of idea. These Green candidates in Waterloo and in Kitchener-Conestoga made a commitment to the Green Party that they would carry that party's banner in this provincial election, that they would represent the party, the Green Party, well. And they made a commitment to voters. They put their name out there. They obviously did some level of advertising and door knocking. So they went to people and said, listen, I am your Green candidate. This is what I stand for. I want you to vote for me. They had volunteers that would help them. And if you're the candidate, you owe all of those people your commitment. And to back out the way that these candidates backed out, just it really rubs me the wrong way. I've heard the argument that it's never too late to make the right choice. Well, that's fine, but I think in public life, in politics, if you don't want to frustrate people and make them even more cynical than they already are, you're going to have to wait to make the right choice. The choice you made was to run as a candidate. You have to honor that commitment. You have to, in my opinion. Because I'll tell you what, I sure as hell would. I probably painted every politician or political candidate with the same brush yesterday, and that's not fair, and I feel remorseful for that. But I stand by my position on this. This does not seem democratic in the least, and I'll add to it this. I know for absolute certain that at minimum in Kitchener-Conestoga, this was cooked ahead of time. This didn't just happen spontaneously at that all candidates forum on Tuesday night or Monday night. This was a deal that was done. And boy, oh boy, if that doesn't sound like backroom deal making, I don't know what does. So I just wanted to clarify on that. And just, again, the way I come to issues is through the lens of what would I do in that situation? How would I act? And I wouldn't do this. I would not. I would honor the commitment that I made. I think that speaks to a person's character and integrity. Dave is with us on the phone this morning. Dave, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. I'm sorry, but I want to quickly change the subject and ask you a quick question.
Okay.
I want to know if you have any strong feelings against the Michigan goal that was scored last night. And if not, are you going to do a quick clip of that call sometime during the show this morning?
All right, Dave. Thanks for that question. I'll see if I can find the clip of the goal. The short answer to the question is no, not a strong feeling, but generally speaking, I'm not a fan of the Michigan goal. Jack Pridham of the Kitchener Rangers scored one last night. The Michigan goal is so named because the first player to do it played for the University of Michigan. Back in 1996, Mike Legg pulled this trick off. And it's like a lacrosse-style goal. You pick up the puck on the blade of your stick and you essentially throw it into the net. Hockey, you're supposed to shoot the puck or tap it in, right? Deflect it, shoot it. But listen, it is tremendously skilled. So strong feeling against it, no. But I would say, to be honest with you, that I'm not a fan of it generally. I could never do it. I think the players that can are incredibly talented, but it's hockey. In hockey, we shoot the puck. We don't throw it with the blade of our stick. Paul, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. Going back to your other topic, my wife and I just had a question last night after hearing about this story with the Greens and NDP.
The Green DP.
So those people that have already voted in the early polls, what happens to their ballot with those names that they've checked?
Well, this is another great question, Paul, because these names, like when you go to vote tomorrow, the names are still going to be on the ballot. The ballots are already printed. So,
so
the votes are wasted, essentially.
I've already sent an email to Elections Ontario late yesterday afternoon. I'm waiting for a reply because they said within 24 hours. Are they spoiled ballots, or does the vote go to the person that Green candidate is now supporting?
No. The vote is to the Green candidate, period. So that's all.
So remember we had that in either provincial or federal last time. The ballots were marked, and maybe it was even city. And even though he got votes, but he said he was not running anymore, those ballots are zeros at the end of the day, right?
You're thinking of Raj Saini, I believe, the former Liberal MP in Kitchener Centre, who withdrew from the race after, and this was a completely different story because of all kinds of stories that came out about him and how he treated people in his office and things like that. So he withdrew, so the Liberals did not even have a candidate. But still, Raj's name appeared on the ballot, and if people voted for him, they voted for him.
And at the end of the day, if he's not running, or if these people are not running, those ballots are a zero. They're a waste now.
Yeah, they're 100%. They're a waste now.
Okay. I'll wait for Elections Ontario, and when I get a reply, I'll let you know.
All right, Paul. Thanks for that. And, a waste insofar as the person that you may have already voted for doesn't even want your vote. They want you to give it to the NDP opponent in the riding. I don't know. But they're still going to get votes. They've already received votes. They'll get more votes tomorrow, whether they're, endorsing another candidate or not. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio, Rogers TV. Oh, I have not managed my time ideally this morning. Paul is waiting on the line. And Paul, I'm going to have to ask you to wait, or better yet, call back. Maybe before 10, because I got to get to the 570 News Center on time. I ran a little bit late yesterday, then I was late the rest of the day. So I'm going to start on the right foot here and get you to the 570 News Center for the 9:30 update, after which we'll talk about one of the region's employees' unions, the union saying the region lied during negotiations. What did they lie about? What are the issues at stake that could bring about a strike on Monday? We'll talk about it coming up. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Well, we are learning of a potential strike by members of CUPE Local 1656 here in the region of Waterloo. That strike could be starting as of Monday, which, don't forget to check your calendar, will already be March the 3rd. But in a statement put out by the union earlier this week, it reads right off the hop, Waterloo Regional Council lied to us. Pretty strong language from that statement by the union. Phil Dominus is the president of CUPE Local 1656, joins us for a conversation. Phil, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
I'm all right, thanks. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Glad to hear it. So how is it that the region lied to the union?
Sure. So we went into bargaining on February 10th with the region in hopes of getting a fair deal. But instead, we were shocked to find out that they presented us with proposals that were significantly lower than what they offered us the previous time we had met. We've been doing everything we can do to reach a deal, but with the region taking back that offer, that puts us in the position that we're in today.
So how much time had passed, Phil, between the previous meeting and that meeting again on February the 10th?
So there was about 9 days in between.
And any idea as to why the offer changed so substantively?
So the only thing I could think of, either the region had lied to us and had no intention of negotiating the wages that they'd offered us, or maybe they did make a mistake. But whatever that reason is, the region needs to come back to the table and honor the commitment that they originally made.
So what are the issues then, Phil, that remain unresolved that bring us to this point where we might be facing a strike on Monday?
So kind of like I said, we've been bargaining for some time now, November to be exact. And we still don't have a deal with the region of Waterloo. And again, we were working hard to get a fair deal. And from our perspective, we thought we were very close. But like I said, the region made reaching the deal much more difficult by going back on wages and asking us to take something a little smaller instead.
So is that what the key issue is here then, wage increases?
It's definitely a priority for sure. And the fact that, they've lied to us for sure. That's significant, right?
So what kind of increases were offered in that original deal?
So I'm not going to talk about that right now, just, to respect the process and everything that's going on. What I can say is, we don't have any further dates to bargain. And we would love to get dates. Nobody wants to be in this position. So let's fingers crossed that, they come back to the table and put that offer back onto the table and we can continue talking.
Phil, we've covered enough labor issues on this show to understand that when a union goes public with a statement like this, it's usually a means of applying some pressure as a deadline approaches or maybe an expression of frustration. What would you say it is on the part of CUPE Local 1656 at this point? Are you frustrated? Are you applying pressure? Is it both?
Sure, yeah. To answer your question, Mike, I'd say, we're definitely frustrated. We're frustrated about the process. We're frustrated about the position we're even having to be in right now. We're frustrated about them going back on an offer that, that apparently they couldn't maybe even offer us in the beginning. But we do. We want a deal. We would love to have a deal before the March 3rd, like you had mentioned. And also, we are putting pressure because they need to honor their commitment and reach that agreement. That is competitive, it's fair. And aside from currently having no future dates to the bargaining unit, that, we're really looking to get this done, and it is frustrating for us for sure.
How confident are you, Phil, that a deal can be reached before Monday?
From our perspective, currently not too confident. Like I mentioned to you before, they've either lied to us and had no intentions of negotiating the wages that they offered, or they did make a mistake. And if that's the case, the employer, like I said, they need to come back with what was originally offered, and we can move forward from there.
So just so folks understand, Phil, who live in the region of Waterloo, how will a potential strike impact them? What does CUPE Local 1656 do? What kinds of services might be impacted here?
Sure. So, some of the primary impacts for sure, it's going to impact the roads that, people drive on daily. It's going to impact, the treatment of water that individuals drink within the region of Waterloo. The emergency services that, people rely on, police, ambulance, we have our individuals that maintain them. Traffic signals, traffic lights, traffic signs, airport services, landfill waste collection, and the big one right now, regional housing.
In terms of building it, maintaining it?
Maintaining it for sure.
Yeah.
Maintaining it for sure, yeah.
And just to be clear, making sure I understood what you said earlier correctly, no talks at this point are scheduled?
Correct. We do not have any current dates going forward right now. So the situation we're in, from our perspective, is where we're headed. Hopefully we can get some more dates. We would love to see that come and happen.
But absent those dates, because here we sit on Wednesday the 26th, absent those dates and any new negotiations, you'll be on strike as of midnight Monday morning?
That's correct. 12:01 Monday morning, we will be in a strike. And, just to put it out there, 1656, we're proud of the work that we do within the region. We're proud of all the services that we provide to the region. We're just looking for some fair wages, and again, for the region to honor their commitment, right?
Phil, appreciate you making time for us on the show today. Thank you very much for being here.
My pleasure, and thank you for having me.
Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
You as well. Bye.
Phil Dominus is the president of CUPE Local 1656 in a strike position, or I think the right way to put this would be threatening strike as of Monday, with no talks currently scheduled. The union said in a very direct statement the other day that the region lied to them in negotiations. And as you heard Phil describe in this conversation this morning, there was an offer made 9 days prior to a return to bargaining when that offer was no longer on the table. So the union feels as though the region backtracked in this regard, as tends to be the case in labor disputes like this. Bargaining doesn't necessarily get done through the media. You can obviously understand the union's intention here of ratcheting up the pressure as that strike deadline approaches, but no talks currently scheduled. The region of Waterloo declined a request to talk about this because they don't want to bargain publicly. However, the region has assured us that Local 1656 represents outside workers and that it continues to work closely with the union and is committed to reaching an agreement that is competitive for workers and affordable for residents. In the event of a strike, the region says, landfill and recycling centers in Cambridge and Waterloo will be closed to the public. And if you want updates on the status of regional services, you can visit regionofwaterloo.ca or follow various social channels. So that's what the region is saying at this point in a very high-level way when it comes to the impact. And the biggest impact sounds like landfill and recycling centers in Cambridge and Waterloo will be closed to the public. I have heard the argument made before, and oftentimes when we get into these conversations about strikes that impact more than just the employees and the employer. We've talked about this an awful lot when it comes to teachers, for example. And I've heard it argued for public servants that they should always be essential. Like, these are services provided to the public by our government. So you're not just engaging in a dispute with your employer. That dispute impacts those of us living in the community. Should public service employees be allowed to go on strike? I don't know. I've heard it argued before that they should not, but this is the situation we're facing in about 72 to 96 hours time. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
We're definitely frustrated about the process. We're frustrated about the position we're even having to be in right now. We're frustrated about them going back on an offer that apparently they couldn't maybe even offer us in the beginning. But we do. We would love to have a deal before the March 3rd, like you had mentioned. And also, we are putting pressure because they need to honor their commitment and reach that agreement.
Phil Dominus is the president of CUPE Local 1656, joins us this morning following an increase. Let's just be honest. I mean, this first came across my radar over the weekend from a family member of an impacted union member. And when it's happening to you, it is the story in your world, right? I get that. And then more started trickling out in the early days of this week as we now reach midweek Wednesday. But the pressure certainly ratcheted up on the region, the union, saying boldly that they were lied to in these negotiations. And here we are. And from that conversation with Phil, it sounds like the issue really is around wages and getting a quote-unquote fair increase for members of CUPE Local 1656. Fair is obviously something in the eye or ear of the beholder. I know that many of us would like to get a fair wage increase every year, or have some sort of certainty attached to a multi-year contract where there are wage increases attached to it. And I do believe in the collective bargaining process and how that rising tide, thanks to the work of labor unions, raises all boats. I do struggle, though, when it comes to public services, because we as the public then get the short end of the stick, if you will, because this becomes about more than just a dispute between the employer, in this case, the region of Waterloo, and its employees, right? Their labor issues impact us as the public. When there are transit strikes, when there are teachers' strikes, when there are strikes on the part of those who collect garbage, etc., and recycling. Like, those are things that we as citizens count on, and we are left completely helpless in all of this, unless, I suppose, we were to ratchet up that pressure ourselves on our regional councillors. You better get a deal done because I need service A, B, or C provided. So should all of these public services be declared essential and they can figure out their labor issues behind closed doors? I can understand that argument. I really can. We're not taking away the collective bargaining opportunity, but we are removing the ability to strike, which, of course, might be the key lever that labor unions hold in all of this. Again, what the region has said at this point is if a strike happens as of Monday, your landfill sites in Waterloo and Cambridge will be closed to the public. Nothing else has really been shared in terms of the overall impact. And at this point, the union remains hopeful that negotiations will be restarted between now and that strike deadline of 12:01 a.m. on Monday, March the 3rd. Like many in the region, union members have seen their wages shrink in recent years due to inflation and the rising cost of living. So they would like to right that ship with CUPE Local 1656. We will, of course, keep you up to date on any news with regard to these negotiations and the potential strike. All you have to do is keep listening to 570 News Radio. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. So how about that front page of this morning's Waterloo Region Record? Wilmot land meant for Toyota plant, blares the headline. Now, when you get into the story, which is a collaboration between the Waterloo Region Record and the Narwhal, you find an awful lot of confidential sources without anything concrete being offered to say, yes, this absolutely is meant for a Toyota plant. But I understand what the paper is getting at with this story, because really what it does is get enough information from enough confidential sources to build the case for something that we have long thought was the story here, and that is the 770 acres in Wilmot Township being assembled for future industrial use really means a future Toyota facility, because that land in Wilmot Township, if you drew the line and measured the distances, you'd find it almost midway between Toyota's existing plant in Cambridge and its other existing plant in Woodstock. So it's always made some sense in that regard. And then, of course, if you look at the investments being made by the provincial government and in some cases the federal government as well, in Stellantis and Windsor, in Volkswagen in St. Thomas, in Honda in Alliston, Ontario, you look at that and say, well, there's a large automaker and a large employer being left out, right? Toyota, between those two plants in Cambridge and Woodstock, employs almost 9,000 people in the area. And don't forget about the spin-off jobs from the Toyota plant itself. We're into the tens of thousands of workers. And if you want to keep that production here, it would make sense, if you're into the idea of subsidizing big corporations, to make it attractive for Toyota to continue investing here, continue creating jobs here, and the spin-off jobs that come with it. So interesting times, but that story seems to reinforce what we have long believed that Wilmot Land Assembly is all about. I'm going to get you to the 570 News Center for an update, and then what a couple to a few days we've had as I look out my window now. The melt is on. The risk of flooding increases. We'll talk about that coming up on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio. Have we had ourselves a winter, or have we had ourselves a winter? All that snowpack creating all kinds of concerns. We talked earlier in the week about our rooftops with all that heavy snow on top of them. Now, as the melt begins, what about the possibility of flooding? Barbara Robinson is the president of Norton Engineering and a good friend of the program, joins us to talk about that. Barb, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. Thank you so much for having me on again.
Always appreciate the time to get your expertise on how we might begin to mitigate any risk of flooding around the home. Where would you start, Barb?
Yeah, so I'm going to recommend that the first thing you want to do as a homeowner is keep water away from the wall of your house. And so in these kind of conditions, that means shoveling the snow away from the wall of your house. And the reason you want to do that is during a melt situation like this, the snow against the wall of your house starts melting first because your house is actually a little bit warmer than the ambient temperature. And that melt water goes straight down the wall of your house into your weeping tiles. Your weeping tiles are, you'll never see them, they're buried. Weeping tiles are basically just a pipe that goes all the way around the wall of your house on the outside below the floor slab. It's perforated and it collects water, groundwater typically, to get it away from your foundation wall to keep your basement dry. So when the water runs down, it can overwhelm your weeping tile system, and whenever you're overwhelming water around your house, you're at risk of flood. If you have a sump pump that takes that water away, it might not be able to keep up with the amount. So that's one. Second, you also want to keep your eaves troughs clear of ice and snow, which is tough this year, but there you have it. And also leaves and debris in spring, summer, fall, or whatever. Because if the eaves troughs are blocked, the water runs down your roof and overtops the eaves trough and runs straight down. Again, that water is near the foundation wall of your house, near the wall of your house, and is at risk of getting into your foundation drains. Again, you want water away from the wall of your house. Speaking of eaves troughs, you've got a downspout and then a downspout extension. So your downspout is the pipe that takes the water down to the ground. You should have an elbow about a foot above ground with an extension on it. The purpose of that extension is to keep the water away from the wall of your house. That's what all this stuff is for. National best practice recommends a 1.8 meter extension. Make sure you keep those extensions on at all times. They protect your house from flooding. And then the last thing, you won't be able to do this now, but certainly in the spring or when you're doing your gardening or whatever, you want to make sure the dirt, the ground slopes away from the wall of your house. Same reason we don't want water running towards it. Now, homes are designed this way, but first of all, homes aren't always built the way they're designed. But also, if your house is a few years old, houses tend to settle, so you can get that reverse flow situation. It's fairly common. That's an easy fix, actually. You just build up the dirt around the wall of your house to create that positive drainage. So you can do that in the summer.
Well, and speaking of drainage, Barb, is there a way that we can ensure that the drainage is going away from the house or from the property to the street?
Absolutely. Yeah, right. So you've got the water away from the wall of your house now. It needs a place to go. With the kind of snowpack we have, it may not have a route. So you're going to want to maybe dig a swale through the snow on the snow part, and on your driveway as well. You want to make sure there's a clear path for water to run down your driveway to get to the street. Now, with these winter conditions, a lot of us had a big bulge at the end of our driveway of ice and snow from the plow or whatever. So that'll block the water from getting away from your property. And anytime you have water sitting, it puts you at risk of flood. So you want to get that water. So get the water away through a swale, whatever. Make sure your driveway has positive drainage. But the other thing most municipalities recommend you do is ensure that the catch basin downstream of your house is not blocked by ice and snow. On a year like this year, the snow and ice have been sitting on there, and often catch basins are blocked. It's not a problem when it's frozen, but when it starts melting, if the catch basin is blocked, that water can back up onto your property. Again, that's a risk of flood. Sorry, I should mention the catch basin is that square metal thing with open grates. It's at the side of the road. Catch basins collect rainwater from the street. That's their function, and they're connected to the storm sewer. That's what a catch basin is.
All right. You mentioned sump pumps earlier, too. For those of us who do have one, I suspect, Barb, it would be a good idea to make sure that it is operational and the discharge is able to do just that and discharge.
Precisely. Sorry, I should have mentioned before when I was talking about making sure you have positive drainage. If you have a sump pump with an outlet pipe somewhere in your property, you want to make sure that outlet pipe is not blocked, because if it's blocked, your sump pump won't be able to push the water, and the water is going to end up in your basement. If your sump pump's not working, there's a lot of water, you may well flood. Your sump pump is an essential piece of equipment that protects your home and your family. It is recommended that you check that sump pump spring and fall when you check your smoke and CO detectors. How to check a sump pump is very easy. Grab a pail of water and pour it into the sump. The float should pop up, and when it gets to the top of the range, wherever it's set, the pump should engage. You could also just lift the float, but I'd rather you pour water in, because that's the exact condition that you're going to have when you actually need your sump pump to work. If it's not working, great, call a plumber. Well, you may or may not need a plumber, but replace that sump pump. By the way, sump pumps have a design life of 8 or 10 years. They don't last forever. They're a mechanical piece of equipment. There's seals and bearings, and these things go. Most people don't maintain their sump pumps. So plan on replacing that every 8 to 10 years. A sump pump failure is immediate. Sump pumps don't start, typically they don't sort of sound funny for a while. They just stop working. So something else residents should consider, not just for conditions now, but any time of the year. You probably want to talk to a plumber about having a backup sump pump. So I just mentioned the sump pump can fail on a dime. Design life's 8 to 10 years, but it can fail at 5 years, whatever, things fail. If you have a backup sump pump, they're set up so that if the first pump fails, it immediately switches the power over to the backup, and then you're protected. Then you've got sump pump working. There's something else about your sump pump, though. It runs on electricity. And the number one time that electricity goes out is during a major rainstorm. That's precisely when you need your sump pump. If electricity is out, your sump pump is not going to operate. So backup power is a very good idea. There are battery backups available. Again, a plumber can work with you on all this. I am going to say do not back up your sump pump from the pressure in your water system. There are systems out there that are available. This is dangerous. It increases it. There's a risk that the sump water will end up in the water system if it's incorrectly installed, whatever. And also, if there's a major rainstorm and power is going out everywhere, power's out at water facilities as well, water pump stations and the plant and all that. And so you're actually taking the pressure in that water system is actually energy that has to be put in. If power's out, you don't want to be pulling that energy from the water system, because it might be needed to provide potable water to other people in the community and or prevent pipes from actually getting pressures that are too low, which is dangerous for different reasons. So Yeah, so talk to a plumber. And, Mike, while you're at it, while you have a plumber at your house, have him run a camera through your sanitary sewer lateral to ensure that it's in good condition. Best practice is to do that every 5 years. That's what we do on public side pipes, and we should be doing it on private side pipes. If your sewer lateral has cracks and holes and gaps, which is very common, all that water I was talking about standing around on your property can soak down and get into your sanitary sewer, and there's a great way to have a flood. So yeah, get a plumber in, make sure your family is protected, and spring and fall. I'd like people spring and fall when you check your smoke and CO detectors, check your sump pump and backwater valve if you have a backwater valve. It's
always great advice that we get when we chat with you, Barb. Thanks very much for joining the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Mike. You have a wonderful day.
You too. Bye-bye. Barbara Robinson is the president of Norton Engineering, giving us some help around the house as the snowmelt begins. Okay, we're going to take a break. When we come back, one of those NDP candidates who got the endorsement from her Green opponent. What does she think about this, and what does it mean ahead of voting day tomorrow? We talk about it coming up on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Big news locally in the provincial election. At an all-candidates meeting in Kitchener-Conestoga on Monday night, Green Party candidate Braden Wagner stepped forward and said, "I'm endorsing my NDP opponent, Jody Szymanski." In Waterloo, Green candidate Shafaza Esmail issued a statement saying, among other things, "Vote Catherine Fife. Vote NDP." I'm sure Catherine Fife, the NDP candidate in Waterloo, is thrilled with the endorsement from a former opponent. And Catherine joins the show this morning. Good morning, Catherine.
Good morning, Mike. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Last day of canvassing, so I'm feeling good and energetic today, for sure.
Glad to hear it. I got to say, I've been seeing the effort put in, and it's evident by signage, et cetera, but you and the volunteers have been hustling for many weeks now.
Yeah, no, I've been very fortunate. The students at University of Waterloo and Wilfrid Laurier have been really supportive, and it's good to see, that generation really getting involved in elections and in politics, for sure.
What did you think when you got the endorsement from your Green opponent in Waterloo?
Well, I have to say it's been a very strange election. Like, the last election was in February 1883, I think, or something like that. So when I read it on X, I was quite surprised, I have to say. Shafaza and I had been at the CBC earlier in the morning. We'd done a debate. And, there was no indication that this was going to come. I think that Shafaza, though, in fairness to her, and also, she's demonstrating how she does care about the community. I'm not saying that this Green vote is going to make a huge difference for me in this election, but I think that Shafaza's goal, though, was to highlight the fact that vote splitting is really a concern in this election, Mike. And when she made the endorsement, she said some nice things, but she also, people are still going to vote Green, right? At the end of the day, it's still their right to do so. Politicians don't tell people how to vote. We have to go out there in the ultimate interview and earn their trust and their vote.
Do you think any trust is lost, even generally, Catherine, in the system, in politics, when something like this happens at essentially the 11th hour?
Yeah, I do. I feel like this was a personal decision that Shafaza had made. It was certainly not a coordinated or organized through the Green Party of Ontario. And I think that her statement, which is, what I'm going by as well, is that, her goal was to highlight the fact that, the vote splitting here in Waterloo is of concern. There's a PC candidate who doesn't live in the riding, who's not running a campaign, who doesn't know anything about the riding. And he's just a few points behind me. And, I'm game to fight for anything and at any time, usually, Mike, especially for Waterloo. But you can't fight someone who doesn't show up. And, imagine thinking that you should get the MPP job without showing up for the interview. And this is probably going to happen across the province. PC candidates have chosen to not show up to debates, to not really launch, huge campaigns. And, our democracy actually depends on these kinds of engagements.
It's been, as you mentioned, a really interesting campaign for so many reasons. And if I think on what you just talked about, Catherine, with vote splitting, we had Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie flat out ask NDP voters to vote Liberal instead. Now here in our community, we've got two Green candidates saying vote NDP orange. Would you, you're no stranger to politics, Catherine, would you talk to Marit Stiles, the leader of the NDP, and maybe have discussions with Mike Schreiner and Bonnie Crombie about coming together under one unified progressive banner?
Well, I think that after this election, Mike, that there's going to be some really hard conversations, right? The right has sort of solidified their vote, and they consistently get about 30% of their vote. We on the left or center left, we fight amongst ourselves for what's left of that pie. And unfortunately, it means that, a PC candidate, like the one that's on paper anyway in Waterloo, could slide up the middle and earn the position of being an MPP without having ever gone through that interview process. So I do think that after this election, we're going to have some hard conversations because vote splitting has been a huge issue. But in our campaign, we also have electoral reform. And, if there was ranked ballots, for instance, so people could go and they could say, okay, I'm a New Democrat, but I really like this candidate, Shivaza, then they could have both, right? And they could exercise their preference for party and for person. In Waterloo, I would say, and this is true of some other ridings, but very true of Waterloo, is that people want to see someone that knows the community, that has shown up for them, and demonstrates the values that they value. So. The long answer to your question is that there will be some tough conversations after this, and I think we have to look at electoral reform, and if that does not go forward, then I think that it is time for us to have a really courageous conversation about political parties in Ontario.
With respect to the PC candidate in Waterloo who doesn't exist in the riding, I have the same situation in Kitchener Centre. So that's 2 of our 5 ridings where PC candidates don't even live there. You have shown up consistently. You are here this morning. In the last 24 hours before the vote, what is your pitch, Catherine Fife, to voters in Waterloo, because you're here to share it?
Yeah, I mean, what I've been saying is that, people in Waterloo have taught me about the kind of leadership that they want, Mike. They have communicated to me about the values that they want me to fight for at Queen's Park. My goal is to, ideally form government and bring in some of our solutions on housing, healthcare, education. But in lieu of that, my goal is to limit the damage that Doug Ford has done to this province. And I'm really hopeful that that RCMP investigation, the criminal investigation into the Doug Ford government around the Greenbelt, I hope that comes to fruition at least this spring, so we can start dealing with the corruption that's happening at Queen's Park. So people want a fighter for Waterloo, and my pitch is that I'm that person. Thanks for making time for the show, Catherine. It's always good to talk to you. Thank you so much, Mike. You take care. You too. Bye-bye. Catherine Fife, NDP candidate for Waterloo, and I will just say bluntly and directly, when you cast your ballot, because I know you will, cast it for Catherine Fife. I find it difficult to find anyone in this community who has represented their riding better. If you're in Kitchener-Conestoga, vote for Catherine Fife. I wish you could. Anyway, that's just my blunt and direct message to you this morning on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I think anyway, I'm going to take what you know about Canada's military, or what you think about Canada's military, and turn it on its ear. And I'll do that in about 30 minutes' time when we talk about a potential paradigm shift for Canada's military. That's just after 11. Right now to your 10:30 update in the 570 News Center, and then let's band together against diabetes to raise awareness and funds for research. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio.
This is the stuff of tradition on the show, and I love it. We could almost set our calendars by it. Every year, my good friend Christy Miller comes into the studio to talk about her incredible fundraiser called Band Against Diabetes. And it must be that time of year because my good friend Christy Miller is right here. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm all right.
Awesome.
How are you?
We're great.
Good.
We're good.
How many years have we been doing this now? I wasn't part of it the first time. I think as of year 2, we got on board with helping promotion.
Right. So we did the walk for a couple of years for JDRF, 2019, 2020. Obviously, there were a couple COVID years there. This is the fourth year for our main event, Band Against Diabetes.
Okay.
So the main stage, the big one.
The big one, you're right. You still do the walk, of course.
We do the walk, yeah, absolutely.
All right. Band Against Diabetes is kind of what it sounds like. Get a bunch of bands together, have a concert to fundraise and raise awareness about diabetes, juvenile diabetes. The reason for this, though, Christy, is one of my favorite parts about it. Can you share the story of how this all got started and why it's so important to you?
Sure. We just call this, the Family Passion Project, basically, is what we call it at this point, because it is our family members doing all of the work, all the organizing, all the bands, all the things. But the background is that seemingly out of nowhere, when I was 21 in third year university, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. We didn't have any family history. We didn't really know anything about it. Totally blindsided. So as my family goes, we, figured out all the things, learned how to live with it. That's basically all you can do at that point. Fast forward a decade plus, pregnant with my first child. People always would say, are you concerned that your child's going to have this? And I said, there's actually there's no guarantee either way. And so whatever, we're going to do this. Oscar was fine. And this is one of the misconceptions about type 1 diabetes. People assume that if you have type 1 diabetes, you're born with it. And that's, as things go, that's actually becoming that fact, or as it was kind of thought as a fact, has been dispelled over the years. So Oscar was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at 18 months. So we saw a lot of the same signs and symptoms that I had pre-diagnosis. Lots of water drinking, using the washroom. At the time, I was 21, so I was like, ooh, I'm a size smaller. This is fantastic. But obviously, size smaller because I was unhealthy. And Oscar at that point was nonverbal. So, by nonverbal, he was a toddler, right? So he had a few words and really couldn't actually say to anyone, this is how I'm feeling or this is what's going on. And so our spidey senses were, this is possible. I mean, it's possible for anybody, but this is looking like what we've seen before. So I actually took out my glucose monitor and I checked his sugar, and his sugar, normal range for sugar is 4 to 7. So if we checked anybody, if you checked your glucose with a finger prick, it should be 4 to 7. His was, I'll get corrected if I mess this up, I think his was 27. So 4 times what your blood sugar should be at any given time. So we packed a bag and took him to the hospital, and that's his story and my story combined. But so now there's 2 of us in our house that are type 1 diabetic.
So what is life like as a type 1 diabetic?
Well, it depends who you ask. You know what? There's all these memes and things. If you look online, it's like you can do the same thing, eat the same thing, have the same medication, and every day is different. You never really know. Just when you think you've got it down and have your doses for your insulin correct, something doesn't work. So it's constantly trying to be ahead of things and monitor things and count carbs and plan for activity. And it is I would say, an all-encompassing disease. You never really get a moment from it. You're always just kind of thinking about what happens next.
As an adult, that's one thing. And so you learned how to deal with this as a third-year university student and beyond. But then a decade-ish later, along comes Oscar. And now you're not only dealing with this yourself, but your toddler is also diagnosed.
Yeah.
So what does that look like?
Well, at the time, he had just started at a new daycare. All the things that I look back now on that I'm like, thank goodness. People are just so good. The whole daycare went to the hospital and was trained in diabetes care. In the meantime, while that was happening, my mom went to daycare twice a day to like feed snack to him and do lunch with him and count his carbs and do his insulin. It just was like all the things that we never could have done just on our own. And people just really stepped up. And so that part was incredible. And the other part now is like friends and family and teammates. People are just, sometimes they say to me like, sorry if this is a stupid question or sorry if I ask. And I go, there's no real stupid question here, right? Because there is a lot of like information, I'm going to use air quotes, a lot of things that people think type 1 diabetes are and the reasons for it. And it's just often misunderstood. So we're actually really appreciative of people just ask us the questions. And I think because we've been so willing to be, well, and now at this point, I'm like the face of it, right? But like, because we've been so willing to talk it out and share, that Oscar's kind of taking that on now too. And I think that for us is pretty cool to see.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And of course, the money that can be raised for research just improves things in your family and beyond.
Totally.
And I want to talk about how we're doing that. The walk coming up, Band Against Diabetes on Saturday, May the 3rd. We'll give you details on all of that as we continue the conversation this morning with our good friend, Christy Miller, the inspiration behind Band Against Diabetes and raising this money and this awareness for diabetes research. Stay with us here on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Christy Miller joins us in studio. Christy has begun, and now I've forgotten her. This is 4 years? 5 years?
4 years.
4 years. I'm so sorry. I should write things down. 4 years of Band Against Diabetes,
right,
which is really the follow-up to you and your family taking part in the annual Walk for Diabetes Research. Right. You've taken it to the next level. Saturday, May the 3rd, Band Against Diabetes at the museum in downtown Kitchener. Walk us through the event, if you could.
Right, absolutely. So this is a new venue for us this year. We're super excited about it. I was just saying to Mike on break, we had the best problem that we outgrew our last location. So we're very happy for the Legion's support, but the walls were getting a bit too small. So we're going to the museum downtown Kitchener this year. The format's staying the same. We have an intro duet band playing at 6:30 for anyone who just wants to kind of have a slow start. And then we have 4 bands playing, Great Dane, Pony Space, Jimmy Hat, and the Van Deffrins. Lots of solid musicians, great music. I always think like our generation of people just want somewhere to go and listen to tunes and dance. Like that's our idea of this night. It doesn't really exist much anymore, right? So,
absolutely.
As well, there's a cash bar. There'll be snacks. And we have a giant silent auction. Last year, I don't remember how many. We had close to 100 items on our silent auction table. So essentially what happens is all the money that's raised from the silent auction, all the money that's raised from the ticket sales, and all the donations that we take to our walk page all go to our walk page. And all that money goes to Breakthrough T1D, which I keep saying to people is the rebranding of JDRF. So they're going by a new name this year. It's Breakthrough T1D. Probably, and like through conversation, a big reason for that is because of the misconceptions that type 1 diabetes is a childhood disease, and it's really not. We're seeing people through all ranges. Actually, I think last year the stats said most people that were being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes were, more than 20 years old. People being diagnosed in their 20s, 30s, 40s, all the way up. So Breakthrough T1D, all the cash too. It's a great event. Lots of good people. And I think with the climate right now of the world, it just makes you think like how many we were talking like breweries and restaurants and stores and things that we have locally that have been so supportive of this event over the years. It's an opportunity for us to showcase those people while giving back to our cause as well.
When you think back, Christy, to the first time this idea popped into your head, could you have imagined that we'd be here all these years later talking about outgrowing your original space?
No, and you know what? This is where I'm like, I'm always like, if I can just get through this with crying, this would be great. But no, I couldn't have ever imagined it. It just was like hey, the Millers we throw together a good event. We like to party. We're good at this kind of thing. And it just was super organic. And I was looking back through our notes and emails the other day in preparation for today, and I think the first year we did it, we raised $15,000, and that to us was like, wow, how did we do that? And you know what? In the moment, it was, right? It was fantastic. And, fast forward to last year, like our silent auction raised $15,000 at the event. So it has grown incrementally over the years. And for that, we're very thankful, obviously, for all of the support. No, I don't think anyone could have imagined it. And, there's a lot of roles and a lot of pieces moving in the background. And it sometimes we have opinions, but everyone's on the same page. And the pathway is clear here. So, yeah, almost $40,000 last year our team raised.
The goal this year, you're hoping to reach 50?
The goal this year is 50. So $50,000 is our goal for this year. I did ask our connections at Breakthrough T1D what we have accomplished over the years, because I wanted a snapshot of what it's looked like since conception. And we were just, as of the end of this year, we were just shy of $85,000 for our team. So this is obviously something we're really proud of, and something we're, hoping people, see the passion and conviction and ask questions of and want to be part of. And yeah, I think it's amazing. I don't know.
It absolutely is.
Just a little family raising some money,
Absolutely.
And I think, I don't know, at one point we were the top fundraiser in Canada last year. I know for sure we ended up in the top 5. So we're on the organization's radar, I would say.
And I was just going to mention that Breakthrough T1D, I receive their emails now thanks to this connection with you and following this every year, which is great. The organization must find tremendous value in what the Millers are pulling off here in the region.
Absolutely. And you know what? It was part of the thing I think that was really cool too, and I should post it on our socials. The goal here obviously is to find a cure for type 1 diabetes. We know that we can live with it. We are living with it, but the goal is to get rid of it. So the money going to research and development obviously is huge. The cool connection that we got to do last year is last June, our family got to go to a lab actually at the University of Waterloo who is working on glucose sensing devices. And that was the first time that lab had any outside visitors come in. And it was just cool because they're being funded by the money that we're raising, not directly us, but any money that's going through Breakthrough T1D is funding their research. So to actually see it in action and to be like touching things that are tangible that are going to be the next step, very, very cool.
I love that, especially in the University of Waterloo.
And the University of Waterloo
Perfect.
too, right? Like
Perfect.
It's just, you can't say enough about how much local connection we have and how important that is, I think, for our success and for the movement of this fundraiser.
Speaking of the local connection that you have, I mean, you reach out, and one of my coworkers was just in here. It's part of the band, one of the bands that'll be playing. You reach out for silent auction donations, and I think people are just saying, yes, we were talking during the break about the breweries that have reached out and said, hey, we want to help. Like it's really, the community just kind of wraps its arms around you here.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
It is so cool. And it's like, now we have made these contacts over the years, and, people have been so generous. And I always say, if I can just do it without crying, but I mean, we couldn't do it with all that support, right? And the amount of people that without like really any questions just say yes, I think is kind of a testament to, our community and what matters to people. I
agree wholeheartedly. So we're having this conversation, Christy, on February the 26th about an event that's coming up on May the 3rd.
Right.
Makes us think about good weather, though. So let's just keep that in mind. And we'll get you back closer to the date to talk more about this and again about this. But where, for now, can people go for information, maybe get in on those tickets already? Where can we go?
Okay, so there's multiple ways of doing it. We're still, like I said, a family fundraiser. So we still actually physically hold physical tickets. So we have tickets. The easiest way to connect with us is through Instagram. Our handle is @BandAgainstDiabetes, one word. Our email is also the same, bandagainstdiabetes@gmail.com. Those are the easiest ways. If you buy tickets from us, trust me, someone from our team will get them to you. That's just how we roll. E-transfer or cash is great. All of the information I actually just posted. If you're interested in giving to silent auction, one of those two avenues for connection or communication And also, we added a sponsorship tier this year because there are, businesses and corporations and individuals that want to be part of this. So we have tiered sponsorship levels as well. So if anyone's interested in that, that information is on our Instagram, or if you email me, I'm more than happy to share it with you as well.
All right. Christy Miller, Band Against Diabetes. I want you to look up Band Against Diabetes on Instagram. Send an email to bandagainstdiabetes@gmail.com. Let's help them get to their $50,000 goal and get that money for the important research, some of which is being done right at the University of Waterloo.
Very cool.
So, great to see you.
Thank you so much
and
for
we'll
your
see
support.
you again anytime.
Absolutely.
May the 3rd is the date. Mark it down. The museum in downtown Kitchener. This is the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I received an email from Paul to Mike at 570news.com. Says, so many questionable comments that you've made today. Me? A questionable comment? I only speak my truth. I only share my thoughts and my opinions. And I encourage you to do the same in response. If you think I'm out to lunch, don't just tell me I'm out to lunch. Tell me why you think I'm out to lunch. I want to hear your perspective as well. So Paul is prepared and already looking forward to our open line Talkback Hour today, which will, of course, happen between noon and 1. Before we get there, before we even arrive at the noon hour, it was a stroke of a pen in Washington, and it has impacted a charity here in Waterloo. Also, the USports Women's Hockey National Championships are coming to Elmira. The University of Waterloo is playing host. We're under a month away now from the 4-day tournament, and you get a chance to take part. We'll talk more about that in about 30 minutes' time. And right after this update from the 570 News Center, I received an email with a really interesting story that talked about a paradigm shift for Canada's military. And in this geopolitical age and all of the focus on our security here in this country, I thought, what an interesting time to share what was an email exchange with you publicly on the show. So that conversation is coming up. Stay with us. It might turn on your ear what you thought about Canada's military. This is the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Let me start this conversation this way. What if Canada's military wasn't so militant? I received an email from our next guest with a really interesting backstory that talks about a paradigm shift for Canada's military. And it would certainly be that. I will warn you, this is absolutely a paradigm shift, but why not entertain the conversation? That's what we're here for. And Blair DeVerti joins me in studio to talk about this potential paradigm shift. Thanks for the email, and thanks for making time to come in today.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Can you share the backstory? It started with just this terrific email and backstory about your father, where this all dates back to 1998.
Yeah. So maybe to start, my father died of cancer in 2023. And getting to know more about him, and I recalled that he journaled a lot and came across some of his both written word as well as in his C file on his hard drive. Came across various writings and musings and things like this, and there was one I particularly remembered, and I went searching for because my dad had, we were living in Petawall at the time. We're a civilian family. My dad wasn't in the military. He was working at a major employer in the area. And is on the backdrop of the Canada had bought 10, I believe, used submarines from the United Kingdom. And the story goes on in 2024. We're on the maiden voyage of the CUPE. One of the submarines caught fire and killed a lieutenant and severely injured others. And I recalled my father being really upset at the time about buying these submarines. He was a taxpayer, and all he wanted was, efficiency and effectiveness in his tax money. And I don't think anyone would disagree with that. So I went searching for this paper. In 1998, he wrote a paper. It's 500 words. It fits on a single printed piece of paper. And really it talks and advocates for, what is the military? What's its mandate? What should it be? And where should we be spending our money? And I thought it was an interesting conversation. He submitted it to the local paper. It was never published. It came up at times at dinner conversations and things like this. And there are a few elements of it that I found super interesting, as I mentioned, in this geopolitical environment that we have right now. One of which suggests that one of the reasons we have a military is to protect our sovereignty. And the thought that our biggest threat to our sovereignty wasn't another nation, because if anyone attacked Canada, the U.S. would, for very selfish reasons, would find that unacceptable and would intervene. And so Canada's sovereignty, as the paper says, is probably the biggest threat was the U.S. And if that were the case, then why are we spending money on our military, on a militant military? Should we be focusing our spending and our military on more of a diplomatic, international defensive goodwill, he called it?
Well, and this is the thing that strikes me, Blair, because really, this is almost the stuff of Nostradamus going back to 1998 with your father recognizing that, hey, if push came to shove, our ally would be there, the United States, to protect us militarily. So why do we have to worry about a militant military if the U.S. is our biggest threat? And if he identified that back in 1998, here we are essentially living that today. Had we gone forward with this paradigm shift that your father envisioned almost 30 years ago, what might that look like today?
Well, so, I think it was, I was listening a few weeks ago, I believe you were asking your caller, should Canada uphold their commitment of 2% spending, as part of the NATO agreement? And I think most of the callers did agree. I think everyone's proud of our military, and I think they should be. And I think my father was very proud of our military, both, historically and recently, the peacekeeping missions, the combat missions, and the disaster relief. I found a little interesting why even the question. It's an obligation. It's a commitment, right? I believe the majority of the viewers believe we should spend our 2%, if not more, on that. The question is where do we spend it? And it was interesting in the Liberal debate last night, the leadership debate, that the first question was on this. And I won't be biased, but I thought it was a little naive that two of the candidates talked, about the immediacy and the need to do it immediately, and I think was suggestive of our protection of our border. And I think suggested that we needed to increase salaries of our military, and I'll support that. But then suggested that we have to arm them adequately. And then two candidates were kind of, we're talking more about research and development and where we could provide research grants and Canadian innovation, and maybe, they went down a drone conversation and things like this. And I just thought, how naive, to think we're going to protect our border militarily from the U.S. and a U.S. invasion. I don't think we're being threatened, in that sense. And then I think, so what are our politicians? What are we doing right now to protect ourselves? We're going to our international allies. We're talking about what great friends we've been with the U.S. in the past. And man, wouldn't it be nice to have a longer list of accomplishments? And I truly believe in that the human spirit values reciprocity, and I think it's a strong influencer. I think it is a way to create diplomatic power, And I think it's something that Canada has historically dabbled in its peacekeeping missions and in before the 90s. And I think I think my dad was suggesting that if we want to be good at something, if we want to invest in something, let's be truly great at it. Let's not be consistently mediocre or even worse, ineffective at it. And could we pivot our NATO spending? Could we convince our allies that our NATO spending is best placed differently, right?
Blair DeVertai in studio with us. His father suggested back in 1998 a paradigm shift for Canada's military. Wrote about it, never got published, but we're having the conversation on the Mike Farwell Show today. Stay with us, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. In studio this morning with Blair DeVertai, who's a Cambridge resident and the son of a man who envisioned a different military for Canada. Perhaps instead of defense in the traditional sense, what if our best defense was the portfolio of international goodwill we had developed? How would you see, Blair, that sort of military, if you will, or that sort of defense benefiting us today?
Look, again, I come back to what is our current defense tactic that we're using right now? And it seems to be to go back to, again, how great friends we were in the past. And we start to discuss various reasons why we coexist, why we've been great neighbors. We try to influence our international allies and tell them about the great things and partnerships we've had before. And during the break, you referred to it as a resume. I said a portfolio. How great would it have been to have accumulated a larger resume of responses, disaster relief responses. It was great that we participated in the California wildfires, but what if we had a team of the trained the best hotshot smoke jumpers? These are the guys and girls that go into the worst areas to try to snuff out these fires. What if we delivered the biggest and largest fleet, most technologically advanced fleet of water bombers, evacuation helicopters, surveillance drones? And then maybe after the fires, what if we offered world-class technology on detection, monitoring, and prevention systems? And then you consider, that suite of technology and products and how that could be applied to an earthquake in Turkey, right? Sniffer dogs or drones or thermal imaging tech, acoustic sensors, search and rescue. Could we mobilize field hospitals and coordinate international aid teams better than anyone else in the world? Could that be our contribution? There's multiple events a year we're seeing, right? Environmental events, floods, mudslides, hurricanes, tsunamis, environmental disasters and spills. They occur all over the world. They occur domestically. And again, I come back to, my father was of a generation, if you're going to do something, do it right. If you're going to, don't be consistently mediocre and inadequate, be the best. And could Canada renew a reputation of being the best? And again, I come back to, and my father comes back to this idea of, is our best defense a shield of international goodwill? Again, he even suggests in the end, right? It's a naive point of view, perhaps, but then maybe not as naive as believing the Canadian taxpayer will continue ad infinitum to pay for an expensive and ultimately ineffective military. And again, he says this, and I want to emphasize, he said this with a tremendous amount of pride for what Canada's military was. And I think we have a deep belief that anybody who dedicates their life, their career to the defense and unity of our country, of any country, is there's not too many more noble pursuits in life. But I think as we reflect back historically of when and where we're proud of our Canadian military, of course there's some of the combat missions that we reflect on in our history books, but we also reflect fondly on on the peacekeeping missions, on the disaster relief missions, again, domestically and abroad. And I think that's something to get behind and to be proud of. You know, you don't have to be carrying a gun to be a hero.
And I think, Blair, that it doesn't take much to imagine the reciprocal benefits that would come from this portfolio of international goodwill that we've built. It goes well beyond, again, traditional military. When you think of the economic impact of that goodwill, for example.
Yeah, good point. And again, I think it was discussed last night, and it resonated with me. You know, the idea of research grants and applying. You know, Canada has and is and continues to have great talent and innovative talent. We see that you know in the region here, and you know, the idea of applying that talent and that spending towards developing Canadian technology, IP, that which we could manufacture and create a manufacturing infrastructure here. It would not only meet our allies' obligations and our 2% NATO obligation. It would not only develop you know, this idea of an international shield, a defensive shield of international goodwill. But it would also feed the economy in terms of we could actually manufacture these products here. We could be the best at it. And it doubles as our own emergency response for when there's occurrences that happen, you know, in and around Canada. So.
You referenced a moment ago how your father signed off that essay back in 1998. A naive point of view, perhaps. Does it seem still today naive to you, Blair?
Like, I think some listeners are going to say, look, we can't get rid of all of our small arms, our missile defense, our, you know, our tanks and helicopters and things like this. But I think there's a balance, but I'm suggesting, you know, that there's been some pretty significant, you know, military procurement debacles in our history, and we're still paying for those and waiting for the delivery of some of these, and I just suggest that a larger portion of our spend could be allocated and appropriated to more effective means. And again, I come back to, I think, how can our taxpayer dollars be used efficiently and effectively? That's probably the naive point, but I think what we really want is, and what we should be looking at is where can we be the best at all times? Where can we be effective? I don't think it's arming our border in case of a U.S. insurrection, right? That equipment will be quickly destroyed, right? So, and I just don't think it's realistic.
It is a fascinating conversation, inspired by an essay your late father wrote back in 1998, and I'm so grateful that you took the time to come in here for the conversation today that he never, I don't think, got to have, did he?
Well, thank you for giving him a platform.
And you being the conduit for it. Blair DeVerti joining me in studio. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Mike.
This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Our best defense might be a shield of international goodwill. Thought-provoking stuff from Blair DeVerti, a Cambridge resident who shared with us this morning the paradigm shift that his father envisioned for Canada's military. We're fast approaching 11:30 and your update in the 570 News Centre. Speaking of updates, I thought I'd share this with you from yesterday's show. You may recall that Colin Robertson, our guy on the other side of the glass, when he is that guy on the other side of the glass, he's very generous and clearly wealthy because he brings me a cup of coffee every day when he is working with me on the show. And these last couple of days, it's been Tim Hortons, roll up the rim to win. And I wondered yesterday if he gifts me the cup of coffee, and then I consume the coffee because it was gifted to me, and I roll up the rim and I win something, what do I do with my prize? I assure you that the value does not matter of the prize that I might ultimately win with this cup. If I win a donut, Colin and I are splitting the donut, okay? If I win a Timbit, can you win a Timbit on this contest? I love the Timbits. I will split the Timbit right down the middle. Anyway, I rolled up the rim, and it's another please play again. So 2 days in a row, we have not had to settle anything between us. We remain friends and co-workers. There is no rift because we don't have to split a Timbit here on the show. The USports Women's National Hockey Championships are coming to our region. Elmira will play host. The tournament less than a month away, and you will meet the captain of the host team coming up on our program today. It's the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. The USports Women's Hockey Championships are coming to the region of Waterloo, Woolwich Township, and Elmira, to be exact. Tournament opens on Thursday, March the 20th. It will run right through the Sunday, the 23rd. The University of Waterloo, the host team. And in case you'd forgotten, those Warriors won their first ever provincial title, the Macaw Cup, last year, and competed at those National Women's Hockey Championships for USports in Saskatoon. The captain of your University of Waterloo Warriors women's hockey team, Leah Herford, joins our program. Leah, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing just fine, thank you. How about yourself?
Doing great. The weather's nice, so I'm in a good mood.
You know what? So I heard this a couple of times yesterday because we had a Rangers game last night. This is playoff weather, Leah, yes?
I guess you could call it that.
I think so. When we're talking about hockey and the weather's like this, it's a good time of the year to still be playing. And before we talk, there's so much that's been going on with you since last year's national championships. But of late, with the Warriors, 4 straight wins, 5 of your past 6. And oh yeah, by the way, you've scored 4 goals over that stretch. No big deal. Things are going pretty well, huh?
Yeah, it's always nice for the puck in the net. It's confidence.
Absolutely. What do you take away from last year's experience with this team, Leah, looking ahead to hosting the national championship this year?
Last year's team is a different team, so it's tough to compare actually, beside each other because we have different players. We have first years who've never been there, and we have our returning players who've obviously been there and been through it, and even the years prior where we didn't even make it to nationals, and I think that played a huge role in our success as well. But, I try not to compare them, actually, because like I said, it's a different team, and you have to treat it that way, or everyone's not going to feel like a part of the puzzle. So,
As the player with that C on her jersey, how do you lead this group of players that have never been there before, those that have some experience, leaning on what you learned to get them ready for what's to come? How do you adopt that leadership role?
Having the C is obviously an incredible honor, but I actually try not to change anything that I've done, and I just hope I can lead by example, and that's just something I try to embody every day at practice and in games and stuff like that. So obviously I have experience under my belt. I've been in the OUA for 4 or 5 years now, so I have that under my belt, and it helps when we get into situations that need to remain calm and just do my thing. But I don't think anything really changes that much, and just try to lead by example.
The pride of Palmerston, Ontario, or as those from there call it, Palmerston, right? It's Palmerston, isn't it?
My grandma would say that.
Absolutely, she would, and that's why I'm saying it too. But did you ever think, Leah, that from Palmerston, you would end up in Italy at the World University Games?
Obviously that's a dream. That's something I wanted for my whole life, so it was super surreal that it actually happened. And I mean, if you don't expect things to happen, they won't. So I kind of had to go with the mindset that it was a possibility, and it happened. So that was super cool, and I had incredible honor of wearing the flag, and that's something I'll take with me for the rest of my life.
What an incredible place to be able to go and play. I mean, could you focus on hockey without taking in all the sightseeing while you were there?
It was we played a lot of hockey. We had a couple, we had 1 or 2 days off where we got to actually go and see Italy, but we actually were in the northern part of Italy, which is, I would say, is not really the touristy spot. So yeah, it was more like the culture was authentic, I would say. There's not a lot of English speakers outside of the event, so it was really cool. And yeah, I mean, I got to do it with some really cool people by my side.
What inspired a girl from Palmerston to get involved in the game of hockey?
Oh, man. Well, I had an older brother, and he played hockey, so I, like any younger sibling, just wanted to be exactly like him. And I actually started in figure skating, so my mom wanted me to be a figure skater, and that was not in my itinerary, I guess. So I just wanted to be like my big brother, and I skated with the boys team in my hometown. And yeah, it just took off from there. There wasn't any girls hockey in the area, but I knew everybody I played with. A small town of Palmerston, it's hard not to know everybody. So yeah, it was cool. I hated it the first couple skates I had. My dad tells me stories. He threw me on the ice and I cried the whole time, but eventually I got it, and here I am.
I remember a former Kitchener Ranger by the name of Jeff Skinner, who also had experience as a figure skater and insisted that it helped him as a hockey player. And watching him play the game, Leah, I would argue that he was absolutely right. Do you lean on your figure skating at all? Does it make you a better hockey player?
Absolutely. I remember my first year in hockey, I was the fastest backward skater on the ice. No one could catch me. But forwards, I mean, we had some work there. But I started as a defenseman, actually, and I found that really helped the transition into the game. And then obviously I moved up to forward in Pee Wee or Phantom or something. So yeah, I mean, skating's super important, and you see it at the highest levels, like the Four Nations tournament. They're all incredible skaters, so super important to have on your belt.
As a student athlete, and you mentioned you've been at it for several years now, how do you balance the academic side with the athletic side?
Yeah, it's not easy. It's no feat at all. You kind of get used to it after a certain amount of time. Your first year is really eye-opening. You don't have much time, but I mean, I also grew up with not much time. You're constantly you're at school, and then you go to the rink, and then you go to the gym, and then you go to the rink, and then you go home and you sleep, and you do the same thing the next day. It's just something that you learn to do, and I've said in the past, if I wasn't busy, I would be crazy. So
it's an incredible commitment, and it's so impressive that you all do what you do at the level that you're doing it at. How are you feeling as the championships approach? We're less than a month away now, coming up March the 20th. How are you feeling as the tournament approaches?
You know what? I honestly haven't really tried to think much about it until this morning, because we obviously have our first playoff game tonight. I woke up and I was just like, it's finally here. It's a new season. I treat it as a completely different season. Whatever happens in regular season doesn't really matter now. But yeah, and like I said, try not to change much. We had success to get us to this point, and so why change what's not broken, really? So, yeah, just taking that championship mindset in with us, and like I said, the experience I have under pressure and stuff like that, so nothing really changes.
How much does the experience of winning that Macaw Cup and going on to the Nationals last year help you this year?
I mean, winning the Cup was obviously an incredible experience, and doing it with that group of girls was super fun, and we kind of realized in the 2 years previous what it really took. We thought we had it in that first year, and we obviously didn't. And then same thing with that second year. Just came close, but too short. And I think there was a large group of us that were on that team and realized what that felt like. So we don't want to feel that again, and now we know what a win feels like. So it honestly makes it that much more worth it. All the hard work and practice and everything we've put in up until this point. So, yeah.
And this year, of course, because the tournament is being hosted here in the region, You get some home team support. What will that mean to the Warriors?
It's going to be awesome. I said this at a council meeting in Elmira, but my brother used to play for the Lisbon Cyclones, and they played against the Elmira Sugar Kings in playoffs. And I've experienced the energy in that building, and I just can't wait for us to be on the home side of that. Knowing the Woolwich Girls Minor Hockey Association is there and all their teams, we've done some community outreach stuff already, and we've got to meet some of the girls that are going to come and support us. And I think that's huge, just to have support from teams like that and family. Like my whole family is probably going to be coming. So, I'm super stoked for that.
How does it feel, Leah, to be a role model for those younger girl hockey players?
It's a really unique experience. I have said this to some people in conversation, but I didn't really have somebody like that growing up. There was a couple girls that played university hockey. So I had them, but there wasn't girls hockey in my area. So I didn't really have somebody to look up to. And now I feel like they're everywhere. Like girls hockey is gotten so much bigger and in smaller areas and just more prevalent. So I think that's huge. And I don't know what that would have done for me. I'm pretty driven regardless, but I can't even imagine if someone did it a couple years ahead of me. So I think it's really cool, and I'm excited for them. I hope that they can take what we're doing and learn from it, and hopefully be inspired.
Well, that drive is certainly evident by your play on the ice, Leah, and I have no doubt you will lead this team to another successful playoff run. We wish you the best of luck in that and can't wait for the championships opening on March the 20th. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Mike.
Have a great day.
Have a good
Bye-bye.
day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Leah Herfort is the captain of your University of Waterloo Warriors women's hockey team. UW playing host to the National USports Women's Hockey Championship. It'll be happening at the Dan Snyder Memorial Arena in Elmira, March the 20th through the 23rd. We want to pack that barn, so get out there and support some of the best female athletes in our community. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Well, it was a stroke of a pen in Washington, but it's had an impact on a charity right here in our community. Joined in studio by Lisa Duvall-Martin, who's the president of Education for Change. Always nice to see you, Lisa. Good morning.
Good morning. Great to be here.
And Chandra Hunter is with us as well, the past president at Education for Change. Chandra, it's nice to see you as well.
Thanks. Nice to see you, Mike.
Lisa, let's begin with that stroke of a pen in Washington and the executive order signed by U.S. President Donald Trump. What did he sign and how did it impact Education for Change?
So he signed a stop work order around all USAID funding, actually all international funding from the U.S. platform. So originally, the signature, we're aware of the signature, but actually the reality of that signature really hit us a few days later, realizing the impact it was going to have on Education for Change, which literally is a stop work order that all work has to stop, that is funded by USAID. And we just recently were gifted. We're a small NGO. We've been working hard for over 10 years, and we're so excited that we actually were just gifted with a wonderful USAID grant to continue some really important work around removing barriers for girls, particularly in school. And so we just launched into this really exciting project, and then we literally had to send stop work orders to all our employees.
Chandra, let's talk about some of the background for Education for Change. Lisa mentions like 10 years of work with this little, in air quotes, NGO out of Waterloo. But what is it that Education for Change endeavors to do?
So we work in partnership with communities in the Somali region of Ethiopia, which is one of the poorest regions in the world, and in particular in a very remote region where we work. So we focus on education, so improving the education that everybody in the community gets. So that includes school children as well as the adults. In particular, women. We have literacy programs to help the women learn how to read and write and basic numeracy skills. And then we're also working towards gender equality. A big part of that is getting girls to go to school, because before now, a lot of girls just didn't have the opportunity to go to school for various reasons. There was a lot of barriers. This particular project aims to kind of provide menstrual hygiene kits to girls and teach them how to use them, teach them about good hygiene practices. We're also building bathrooms for the girls at schools so that they can use them. It's a big, I guess the main focus is education, and with a big focus on girls and getting those girls in school.
So this really shows, Chandra, the impact that the stroke of a pen can have on people. No disrespect, but let's forget the organization for just a moment. The people that you're helping through Education for Change, this has real life implications.
Yeah, I mean, for our staff, it's devastating. Like Lisa said, this was a new program, so we had hired new staff with, you're going to have a job for 3 years, and then now all of a sudden, maybe you're not, and then the people we serve as well, there's thousands of girls who are not going to school because, especially when they're menstruating, because they don't have anything to deal with that. And it's embarrassing for them, to try to deal with that at school, especially if there's even no bathroom at their school. How do you even manage that? We were really thrilled with how the project was going. And so it's really, really disappointing that it has to stop.
So, Lisa, as an organization now, how do you respond? How do you adapt?
Well, I can say just cheering on our country director, Abdi Mawiye, who has done an amazing job establishing the office in Addis Ababa and also we have an accountant. So really well managed funding. So we've been able to pay up until the end of February all our staff, which we're very grateful for, wondering what was going to happen with the order. But as we know, the order is all caught up in the courts. So we still are at a stop work. So as far as moving forward, we feel we need to move forward with the project. We started off with a pilot of 300 kits that were distributed with education in partnership with Days for Girls. And that pilot informed moving forward with this full project. We've distributed 1,800 kits with education through hired outreach worker women in three locations in the Somali region. And we have 2,500 kits sitting here waiting to be shipped for the next phase and of education and distribution. And so our I guess the wonderful opportunity to be here is to say, to your listeners, a little goes a long, long way. So for those 2,500 kits, I get emotional, but those 2,500 kits, it's about $9 a kit for us to get them there, distribute them, educate the girls. And that's about the cost of a box of tampons for us here in Canada. So if your listeners would be open to going onto our website, look at our website, and hit the news link at the top. A shout out to Jan Hansen, who's been doing our website, doing an amazing job. And look at our news. And then, of course, you can donate right on our website. And so the challenge I'm going to put out there, Mike, is that any listeners that donate within the next 2 weeks will totally identify that that's going towards this specific project to get those kits to Pearson International, to Addis Ababa, then distributed to these 3 locations. And our goal is a sustainable project so that in these 3 locations, our goal is to establish enterprises to actually produce the products themselves So that really is the long-term goal for us. So love to have your listeners just get onto our website, click the news button, see what we're doing. And our press release is there. And thank you to you for responding to our press release around the concern around the loss of the funding for this project.
We can do this. We can unlock those 2,500 kits for sure. The website is education-the4-change.org. We got about 30 seconds,
Okay.
Chandra.
I was just going to say that these kits, they provide enough materials for 3 years for these girls. So for $9, like you're helping a girl for 3 years of her life. So it's such a small amount for us, but such a significant change for them.
Little goes a long way. Education-the4-change.org. Chandra, Lisa, thank you very much for being here, and thanks for the work that you do.
Thank you.
This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I just said to Colin Robertson on the other side of the glass, has it been a show? I feel like I've done my share of talking, so I turn things over to you. Let me put my feet up for the next hour, okay? I want to hear from you about things we talked about today or whatever else happens to be occupying the space between your ears. The Talkback Hour begins after this update from the 570 News Center. On the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't scrub that kitchen floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Just finish cleaning up your room. Let's see that dust fly with that broom. Get all that garbage out of sight, or you don't go out Friday night. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Do you remember during the Farwell Show 5 at the beginning of the show today? And I said, believe it or not, on-street parking bans remain in effect because the snow events continue in the region since the big dumping 2 weeks ago. Cleanup continues. Well, the snow events are now officially, because we've passed noon, over in Waterloo and Kitchener. Haven't heard from Cambridge yet, but Waterloo and Kitchener have ended their snow events. So on-street parking is once again permitted within the hours approved, of course, but just thought I'd pass that along. I have it on good authority that I have said many things today that are outrageous. I don't think that was one of them, that the snow events are still in effect and now they've been canceled, but I want to give you a chance to respond to those outrageous things on the Talkback Hour, okay? 519-570-2545, star 570, 1-800-570-5715. Paul, you can start us off.
Outrageous, yes, but you are entitled to your opinion. You can't force it on me, but you are
You're right.
entitled
I
to your
can't.
opinion.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. So, a lot of different things, but since the provincial election is the closest, and a comment that you made earlier kind of got me going a bit, I'm going to deal with that.
Okay, what comment? What did I say?
About, how did you put it? Candidates in a riding that weren't from the riding.
Oh, that chafes my chaps like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah, okay. Now, let me tell you a little bit here. There's a lot of people that run for political office that know they aren't going to get elected. First off, they're not even going to put in the work that it takes to get elected. They know they're not going to get elected, but it does give them a political platform for a short period of time in order to push their agenda. Now, Bonnie Crombie said that she would run a candidate in every single riding. That was her commitment. So we've got somebody from Cambridge running for the Liberal Party down in Lambton County.
It's ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous.
But they do this, like I say, they just put in these so-called placeholders. They put them in there. The candidates that were running for the Green Party in the ridings in question at this time, they had no intentions of winning. They weren't doing the campaigning. They weren't doing the door knocking. They weren't doing the get out the vote or anything else. They knew they weren't going to win. So at the last minute, they did what you suggested: throw their support against.
I never
else.
suggested that. Not for one time did I suggest that.
For a anybody but conservative vote.
That Cooperate for Canada is suggesting that. I have not suggested that, although I would like the left to unite. I think it should unite.
So you do have that belief that you think it would be better. I don't think it would be. But
well, of course not, because you're a conservative. You want to keep winning, and that's fine.
No, if these extreme lefts, and don't say center left, these people are so far left they're going to fall off the edge of the planet.
No, only the NDP is, and provincially they're not. But anyway,
NDP, Liberals, they're all extreme left.
No, they're not.
You want a centrist party? The only centrist party we have is a conservative party at both the provincial and the federal
That
level.
is not even close to true.
Okay, like I say, you have your opinion, I have mine.
That's fair.
Where was I going here? There's so many things today. You asked if anybody watched the debate last night.
All right, Paul, you're at your 3 minutes I promised you.
Okay. I watched the debate last night. I wasted 2 hours of my life. It wasn't actually a debate. It was just everybody get up, just like the local nomination meeting that you ran. There's 4 bobbleheads up there standing on stage, all saying the same thing.
Well, because they're all running for the leadership of the same party. That would be my take. I've been thinking more about this idea of just running a full slate of candidates. So somebody from Cambridge is running in Lambton. There is a candidate in Waterloo who lives in Oakville. One of the candidates in my riding for this provincial election lives in Barrie or near Barrie. You know what this tells me? This tells me we have too many parties for too few seats, right? Because everybody's got to run 124 candidates. So there's another reason, I think, to let the left figure its stuff out. Instead of 3 parties on the left, and therefore, what do I got? 372 candidates. What if you only needed 124 candidates? What if? It's 124 seats in the province, right? Then all of a sudden, you're not running people that don't think they have any chance of winning. How about that for an idea? Baby, I'm on fire today. Jersey Bill, good afternoon.
Yeah, well, going to sit down for dinner last night, and guess what? Knock came on the door, and it was some volunteers from the Green Party, and along with them was MPP Clancy.
So you must be in Kitchener Centre. Well, I know you're in Kitchener Centre because I've been to your house.
Yes, right. And what surprised me is, she was very open. I've been ranting about the party shenanigans going on, and she almost sort of contritely said, I've been trying to work with other parties. We're trying to do something that would show a united front, but it's so difficult. So you know what? I have to admit that only she and another candidate who's from this Ontario party, which had never run anything here, Sebastian Butner, they're the only 2 that ever showed up. And then I just saw a few minutes of a panel that Laura May Lindo was doing, and it was so geared to her NDP kind of far left ideas that only the Liberal candidate let's see. The NDP was Brooklyn Wallace. And
so it's Kitchener Centre. Yeah. So Kitchener Centre is Brooklyn Wallace for the NDP, Colleen James for the Liberal, Ashlyn Clancy for the Green, and some guy from Barrie for the PCs.
Oh, that's Rob Elliott. So I guess he is the Soraya candidate. But really, what struck me was that there was a real connection between Clancy and Laura May Lindo, even though they supposedly come from different parties. And the other 2 just seemed Colleen James just seemed to be sort of wanting to appeal to because she's an intelligent black woman, and she wanted to appeal to the minority population, which of course isn't the majority even in this district. I would just say I felt sort of bad because Clancy asked for my vote, and I said, I can't vote, but I will tell my wife. My wife probably will vote for her because she seems to be the only viable candidate here. and she does seem to, even when she's been on your show, she seems to be really an MPP who's worthy of holding the position. And I sort of wish that Mike Schreiner, he seems to be doing today, would just have concentrated on his district, this district, and riding. I mean, and maybe 5 or 10 other ridings where he had a chance. Maybe that's what he did. But to throw 124, how many candidates he ran, just seemed to be a duplication of effort with these other parties.
All right, Billy, appreciate the call. I will concur that Colleen James is not just intelligent but brilliant. I absolutely would concur with that. And you make me think of something else, because I also live in Kitchener Centre, and the ground game and the effort put in by Aislinn Clancy and the Green Party has been extraordinary and above and beyond any other candidate that I've noticed. Even when it comes to literature being delivered to your mailbox, for example, I recognize that this is a strange campaign, and it's been really short, and it's a snap election and everything that comes with that. But here's my wackadoodle idea for the day. I think what we should do, there should be a mandated minimum spend on advertising for each party. I don't think that there is. If there is, and I didn't know that, please correct me. But there should, if there is not, there absolutely should be. So you must spend $5 million. I'm just throwing out a number, but so that everybody knows that there's an election. And you can't just spend it all on digital. I want you to go across digital. I want you to go across radio, TV, newspaper, door hangers. Like, honest to gosh, not even a piece of literature from every candidate. How can that be? How can that be? I'm voting tomorrow, and I haven't had your literature. You're making me do all the work. The parties, you want your damn elections? Spend money on them. It's your 12 o'clock Talkback Hour on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Right back to the phones, a very busy Talkback Hour this afternoon. Tom, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. Well, I think you sort of helped me out there. I didn't know that the Liberal from Cambridge was not a Cambridge resident.
No. He said there is a Cambridge resident running for the Liberal Party in Lambton.
Oh, in Lambton?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
the
Liberal candidate in Cambridge is Rob Deutschman. He's very local.
Well, so that just sort of like, now what? Like, I guess there's a candidate or there's an opposition leader who lives in Ottawa, he's from Calgary, right? But he represents Carleton East. So I'm trying to figure what Paul's saying there. Like, I guess political parties put certain people in places that there's an opening or they have a chance to win.
Well, Jagmeet Singh's a great example. Was parachuted into his riding out in British Columbia so that he could win a seat and become the NDP leader with a seat.
But no one sees anything wrong with that. That doesn't make a lot of sense. But okay, all right. But when we get through this election and we're still having issues with healthcare issues and people don't have a doctor, there's one thing that someone hasn't talked about is that when you have a doctor. And your doctor says, by the way, you can, if you go to a walk-in clinic, you will no longer be my patient. I have an issue with that. You're basically telling someone that even if it takes me 2 weeks to see you or 3 weeks to see you, if I need to see a doctor and I go to a walk-in clinic, you're going to drop me as a patient. So I don't know how that works either.
Your guess is as good as mine, Tom. I know that healthcare needs to be fixed. And we had a blue ribbon panel on this, didn't we? I think the Ontario PCs had thought they were figuring it out. Rob, good afternoon.
Hey, Mike. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Not bad.
Good.
This has got nothing to do with politics. But anyway, long story short here, son-in-law got into a fender bender in a snowstorm. And anyway, it's a reputable body shop. They're going to fix it for him for $8,000 out the door, guaranteed. Their work, all this stuff. The insurance adjuster looked at it. He goes, it's a write-off. I'll give you $20,000. How does that work?
Oh, listen, Rob, I could talk your ear off about this, but I'll spare you. Went through the same thing many, many years ago with a car that I absolutely loved. I begged my insurance company to let me keep the car, to do the repairs, and they wrote it off. I couldn't win. I had to give up. I'm like, okay, you're writing my car off. I loved that car. I bet you I'd still be driving that old thing. Anyway, I wish I had an answer for you, and I'm sorry that I don't. Kyle, talk back to you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Well, it was a good drinking game last night watching the Liberal debate. I debated a little drinking game on if they went against each other as a shot. If they were not agreeing with each other, it's a shot. And every time that Kirstia Freeland said the way she says Canadians, it was a shot. So it was a fun little time. But the person that really stood out to me, and I know he's never going to get in, was actually Frank Bayless. I think he did a really good job. Not that I'm going to ever vote for the Liberal Party, but I think he did a really good job out of all the candidates. It just, he's got no ties to Trudeau. He's an engineer that I guess ran his own business and seems pretty intelligent, but seems like they already picked their winner of Mark Carney. But that's what I just picked up from it last night. So didn't miss anything. It's just not even a debate. It was just an agreement with everybody. It's kind of boring, but so that's why I made it fun. Thanks there, Mike.
All right, Kyle. Appreciate the updates from the debate because I was serving my other master last night and calling the Kitchener Rangers 6-1 win over Guelph. So I missed the debate entirely. Anything that you have to offer from what you heard or saw, I'm happy to hear about. Afif, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, Mike. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Okay. I have to tell you about your show. Okay, so this started about 6 months ago. I basically started listening to your show, and I was in a bad spot with I didn't know what to do. So I was like, oh, man, I usually hated talk shows. But then I turned on your show, and it was fun, exciting, and happy. So all I gotta say to you is thank you for your show.
Afif, I really appreciate that, and the fact that you call this show happy, makes me so happy because I went home yesterday. Again, I'll just reference how I was upset. I'm still upset. I do not like it, Sam. I do not like your Green Party in Ham. I don't like what happened in Kitchener-Conestoga and Waterloo, where 48 hours before voting day, the candidates just said, nah, not. You committed to the party. You committed to the volunteers. You committed to the voters. You put your name forward, and I'm sorry. Yes, the left should figure out which one is going to run. But you got to figure that out before the campaign. You can't campaign in bad faith, which is what happened here. And it's undemocratic, in my opinion. I was so upset. I was still fired up when I went home. I was passionate on the air. I was really just going from the heart and off the cuff. And I didn't think I was very happy at all. I'm glad you said happy. I'm glad you follow the show because conversations like this matter. And we're going to keep having them. It's your Talkback Hour on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I forgot to mention before the last break, I'm sorry. Cambridge has now also canceled its snow event. I mentioned just as we started this Talkback Hour, both Kitchener and Waterloo had done it. Now Cambridge did too. They all got canceled around the same time. So here's the thing. All three cities, within moments of each other, canceling the snow events. They could have probably copied and pasted the media releases. You see where I'm going with this? I want one government to unite us all. Could you imagine if we just one media release and the snow event? These are not the droids you're looking for. These are all the snow events canceled. Instead, we get one from one municipality and another municipality, and you get a municipality, and you get a municipality, and then you get to be an elected councillor, and we have 59 elected councillors in 7 different municipalities, and oh my goodness gracious, we need one government to rule us all in this region. Please and thank you. I am here for unification. I want to unite the unamalgamated communities of Waterloo Region. Thanks to Paul for the email. To Mike at 570news.com. If you have a family doctor and you go to a walk-in clinic, there is, or at least was, a chargeback to your family doctor by OHIP. I seem to recall that being the case. Tom called earlier and said he's getting de-rostered if he visits a walk-in clinic. We'll try to determine the details on this. Again, healthcare is a mess. Should be an election issue. I don't think it is, unfortunately. Talkback continues on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio, Rogers TV. And right back to the phones on this busy Talkback Hour for your Wednesday afternoon. Tom, good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. How are you? I watched the debate last night, and all of them could have been prime ministerial or put them all in. I don't understand why they didn't kick out Trudeau earlier, because these people are really good. Everything they said. And now Poilievre, carbon tax Poilievre, that's all he knows. So I don't know. I think he's got a problem. But the only thing is you got to get rid of all the illegals in the country. You got 4 million of them. So, but they looked good, and any one of them is a better fit for this guy. They should have a way out if he's bad to the party to kick him out or vote him out. So that's the only thing I said.
All right, Tom. Listen, in fairness, I like how Tom starts his call with, "Hi, how are you?" and then just keeps, like, it's one stream. There's not a chance to answer. So I don't know if he really cares how I am. And that's fine. You don't have to ask how I am when you call. In fairness to Pierre Poilievre, our system is set up such that those in opposition must oppose. That's what they're supposed to do. But I get where Tom is coming from. He's basically saying, axe the tax isn't enough for me to get a vote. I need more substance than just the slogan of axing the carbon tax. I think that's where Tom is coming from on that. Anyway, continuing. It's very busy. Bob, good afternoon.
Hey, Mike.
Hi, Bob.
Yeah, I watched the debate last night too, and it was kind of nice to see people not attacking each other while they were talking. You could actually hear what they were saying. And it was nice to hear a plan besides, like the other guy said, about cutting the tax. And not one person said that Canada was broken, but yet they had a plan to help it.
Let's just remember, Bob, this was a leadership debate, not an election debate, right?
I know.
Okay, so
I'm just explaining what I liked about it.
I understand.
My voice count.
It does. I just want to be clear so that we don't get people confused, that it's just because it was liberals talking that they weren't talking over each other and they had plans. A leadership debate is much different. You'll hear plans from leaders, all the leaders, when we have a federal election debate. You'll hear plans.
And not one person was bending over and kissing Donald's butt.
I don't think you'll hear any party leader kiss Donald Trump's butt during the election campaign.
The puppet in charge of the Conservatives sounds like Donald Trump.
Okay. You haven't heard him say how he wants to fight the tariffs?
I heard him say he wants to produce more oil and how the country is broken. And he was talking about the woke syndrome on the left.
Okay. I have heard with my own ears Pierre Poilievre say he will fight tariffs.
And I wonder why he turned against the GST and the HST when their party brought it in. I find that kind of curious.
All right. Well, you can find it curious that they are against GST. Is that what I heard? Turned against the GST and the HST? Listen, don't talk to me about no GST, okay? Because I remember the commercial. I can still see it. There was Jean Chrétien. He had the red book. He had the plan. It's the plan, the red book plan. And he was drumming his fingers on the red book. And that plan back in, 93? Jiminy Christmas. Am I that old? Anyway, the Liberals were getting rid of the GST. And here we are. So don't talk to me about no GST, please. Terry, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, Mike. How are you? Pause.
Well
you can
played.
Answer.
Okay, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good, thank you. Well, I get to follow Liberal Bob. I'm honored. A legend like that. Anyway, this healthcare thing with the provincial government. I mean, Kathleen Wynne was going to fix it. So was the guy before her. Doug Ford came in and said he was going to get rid of hallway medicine. That didn't happen. Now, Bonnie Crombie saying she's going to fix. I don't think it can be fixed. They have to blow the whole thing up and start from scratch. Like, they have to reform the whole system.
I've heard that argument before, yeah.
You can't keep putting Band-Aids or preaching Band-Aids and then not doing anything about it. And quickly before I go, Mike, I know Paul from Preston brought it up about the Liberal leaders debate. I think Chrystia Freeland is damaged goods. I mean, she was part of this previous government that, is not very favorable. But Mark Carney, let's put him in. He's a well-seasoned veteran. I mean, he hasn't been around, he hasn't been in the House of Commons, but he was the governor of the Bank of Canada, and then he went to become the governor of the Bank of Britain, I believe, for a while. And he's well-seasoned. He's a worldly individual. Now, if he goes up against Pierre Poilievre, I don't see any contest. How can Pierre Poilievre measure up to Mark Carney in terms of being seasoned and well versed? I mean, unless playing house league hockey at 10 years old is your claim to fame, I don't know what else you can do. Like, I mean, this should be no contest if Mark Carney wins the Liberal leadership thing. So I don't know, but I think Liberal Bob had a point. I mean, Poilievre, all I hear on his commercials is he shows pictures of him in his youth and climbing up a hill to raise a Canadian flag, and then talking about this carbon tax, axe the tax. I mean, you gotta have more substance than that, friend. So I don't know. Anyway, that's my thoughts on it. Like Paul from Preston said, it's my opinion. Anyway, Mike, have yourself a good day, and I think the Rangers are locked into that third spot. What do you think, Mike?
Oh yeah, pretty much guaranteed on that front, Terry. It'll be tough to move up. London would have to really falter for that to happen. On the Pierre Poilievre versus Mark Carney front, I think it's obvious that the Conservatives federally are concerned about Mark Carney because they have already begun carbon tax Carney attacks, in air quotes, if you will. So there's that aspect to consider. And I think Terry makes a fair point. If we're just being honest about this, okay, Mark Carney's worldly experience, Governor Bank of Canada, Governor Bank of England. Whether you think he did a good job or not, that's fine. But there is a breadth of experience and probably a depth of experience that Mark Carney possesses that Pierre Poilievre simply does not. Because Pierre Poilievre, since he was in his mid-20s, has been an elected representative in our federal parliament. He's a career politician. And I'm not trying to knock career politicians, but that's a fair point, I think, to make. Pierre Poilievre's experience doesn't go beyond parliamentary walls, let's say. So maybe there's, and I think there's good reason for the Conservatives to be concerned. I don't think the Liberals are going to. I think the Liberal brand is far too tarnished by its outgoing leader to make much of a dent in the next federal election, but that's later. Tomorrow is our provincial election. JB, you're on the Talkback Hour. Good afternoon.
Well, you remember what Chrétien used to say, the Canadian economy is like being stuck in the snow. You go forward, you go backward, you go forward, you go backward. Anyway.
And even if it's not yours, happy birthday.
Right. 2/3 of the way there.
We're terrible people, JB.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaking of terrible people, I'm with you. I'm frustrated. I work from home. I'm home all the time. Do you know how many people have knocked on my door? One person for Catherine Fife. That's it. Nobody from any of the other parties, and I'm kind of glad that I didn't vote early on the weekend because I typically I'm a hippie. I'm a social, I'm social. I'm whatever. I vote green usually, and that's where my vote would have gone. But now that I know what's happened, I have to sort of rethink and reconsider my whole opinion and my whole option here. It's frustrating.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah, and I live in Waterloo. You'd think that somebody would want to try. I mean. I get it. Catherine's been here. This would be what, her third or fourth term,
I think. Yeah.
So, I get you probably are afraid to try to run against that, but wouldn't you want to? Is there nobody with the cojones to make an effort? Like, what's going on here?
Great question.
Have a good one.
Thanks, buddy. You too. When we talked to Catherine Fife earlier, this is just my observation in this election. But you want to talk about somebody with a ground game to speak of. You can see it in Waterloo, and JB just confirms that. I've mentioned the same thing about Ashlyn Clancy in Kitchener Centre, and Billy called earlier and said the same. I mean, at least one candidate in each of those ridings is putting in some level of effort. I don't know where the other candidates are, but I know we have to vote for one of them tomorrow. So good luck with that. We'll take a break, come back with more of your Talkback Hour. It's the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. We are engaged and invested on the Talkback Hour today. I love it. That's what it's for. Right back to the phones. Pat, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. I had in my mind a couple of things I wanted to talk about today that I thought about calling in about. As soon as you mentioned the single government thing again, I had to call in. Franklin Boulevard. I don't know just how familiar most of your folks are up north of the 401. The traffic report today said that there was an accident between somewhere between Avenue Road and Clyde Road. Now, there are 4 streets.
Between Avenue and Clyde.
Yeah. And, I mean, I can't really fault your traffic people because they know what they know. They just, whatever they're told to write or to say from what is written is what they do. That's a kilometer-long stretch divided by a concrete median. And there's no way to get to the other side of the road unless you want to drive a kilometer minimum. The second thing about Franklin Boulevard is there are 2 stretches, one between Canamera Parkway and roughly Saginaw Parkway, across from St. Benedict School, and the other one just on the other side of that intersection as it goes down the hill. These are basically well-maintained gravel roads. And there are a few stretches along there where it feels like you're driving through the ditch. This has been the case for several years. Now, whether that would be improved under one single government or just one single level of government looking after their responsibilities more in a more efficient manner, I'm not sure. But I mean, there seems to be an attitude, whether it's real or just imagined on my part, that things don't necessarily get looked after in a timely manner regarding Cambridge.
I understand that sentiment. We've heard it lots before, Pat. But let me just, if I can add, Ira Needles Boulevard is an absolute joke as a road. And that's a major regional road, Kitchener and Waterloo. It's the same as you're talking.
The quality of the road?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I mean, there are city roads in Cambridge that are in absolute horrid shape, and I live on one of them.
But I'm just saying the same issue could be made, the same argument could be made here in Waterloo. We're like literally where I'm sitting today, on the border of Kitchener and Waterloo.
Yep.
It's the same argument could be made. So I don't think Cambridge is being ignored, is all I'm saying.
Well, and there's one other thing as well. Now that Mr. Trudeau has announced that they're going to be building a high-speed rail link between Toronto and Quebec City.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sure they are. Sure. They'll fix Franklin Boulevard before they do that, Pat.
Yeah. Well, no, the point I wanted to make was that this is the second taxable thing that Cambridge residents will be rail project that Cambridge residents will be paying for without any tangible results unless we travel to another city to take part in them.
All right. Listen, fair enough. I feel Cambridge, can I just say again, I love you. In fact, I'd like to adopt you, but send Franklin Boulevard to Brantford. They can have Franklin Boulevard. But the rest of you I want. Like, come on, we love you, Cambridge. We do. Ernie, you're on the Talkback Hour.
Hey, Mike, quick comment about the rail line. We know who's got that contract, right? If that goes in?
Which rail line? The high-speed rail?
Yeah, the high-speed rail.
No, we don't. We have the consultancy we know. We don't know who's got the contract, do we? No.
Well, yeah, it's former SNC Lavalin, just so you know.
No.
Yes, it is. You can look it up, Mike.
Okay.
But anyways.
Come on, are you sure?
Take a look.
Okay.
You can check that out.
Okay.
Bob and I must have been watching a different debate last night. I'm not sure what feed he was on or which one I was on.
Bob wears red glasses when he watches everything.
So, but the one thing I was surprised I didn't hear was Harper. So, like, I heard Trump bad, Tier bad, but I didn't get to hear that. I'm thinking, well, maybe that's because they can't blame Harper for the past 10 years, but the previous 10 they can't, right? So I was shocked that I didn't hear that. I was waiting for that name to come out. Maybe I fell asleep because I could only handle so much of it as well. But this is a different comment on a different aspect that I just want to see what you're thinking here, but it concerns me. With Trump it looks like he's signing a new deal with aluminum with Russia, and obviously that's where he's going to tariff us, and that's what we're currently giving them a lot of. And the mineral deal that he's selling with Ukraine, there's a rumor that they're looking at taking Canada out of the Five Eyes program, and I know that's strictly just a rumor, but doesn't it sound like we're kind of getting bullied out of everything they kind of need from us a little bit and what we need from them? Like, I think some of Trump's cabinet needs to wear those pink shirts today to remind them of what's going on here. But I kind of feel like we're slowly getting pushed out of what they really want from us. So if we're going to tariff and go back and forth, if they're outsourcing and getting their stuff that they need from us from other places, how much weaker are we going to be? Like, I'm not saying that's the case, but just with those 2 points of view there, Mike, I don't know.
All right, Ernie, appreciate the call and the thoughts, always asking questions. I just want to go back to, because I confess to having listened with one ear and Googled with the other, to check on SNC-Lavalin and with regard to the high-speed rail proposal for Canada, which isn't going to happen anyway. Can we just be clear about that? But anyway, I was on the right track with that. We are spending upwards of $5 billion on the consulting process, and there have been 3 organizations, consortia for the fancy word, selected to submit proposals. But that's it. Like, nobody's been given a contract yet, but they are answering a request for proposal. One of them is Atkins Realis, which is formerly SNC-Lavalin, but no tender has been awarded yet. And when I Googled High Speed Rail Canada, SNC, one of the first links that came up was to the Western Standard, which says the high speed rail will be built by SNC-Lavalin. I'm sorry, but the Western Standard is not exactly real news. You have to be careful. You have to be a discriminating news consumer, okay? And so you're getting fed a line there. We're spending $5 billion to figure it all out, and we're going to put out some bids or some requests for proposals, but nobody has been selected to bid and build yet. So that's way down the road, and I don't even think it's going to happen. It's the Mike Farwell Show, Talkback Hour, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Time flies when you're having fun, and the phones are buzzing. We're fresh out of time. Now you know with Rob Snow is coming up, and if that sounds familiar to you, well, the show will too, because technical difficulties mean you're getting a best of Rob Snow, and Now You Know coming up right after this update from the 570 News Center. Colin Robertson, our guy on the other side of the glass. My name is Mike Farwell. Bye for now.